We are already pretty much halfway through the 2022-23 NHL season, which is insane. I feel like the season is just flying by. Some teams have even already played over 41 games. So it is time for my annual mid-season grades for all 32 NHL teams. I am changing it up a little bit this year. As you can see, we have S tier, which is basically the best of the best. And I think I'm only going to put one team in there. I literally added that category just for them. And then at the bottom, we have Bedard, where I'm just going to put the teams that just weren't trying to win this year, because I feel like it would be unfair to put them in, say, F tier when their whole goal this season was to lose and get the best odds at Connor Bedard. And before we get started, I do once again want to shout out my second channel. I have been uploading over there every day, so if you want more NHL content just in short form, like 2 to 3 minute clips, be sure to go check out my second channel. Link is at the top of the description. And I also want to give a huge thank you to you guys on this channel because we just hit 69,000 subscribers. It's been a great start to the year, so if you're new and you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. My goal is 100k in 2023, so every subscription counts. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started, and I'm just going to get this one out of the way. The Boston Bruins are going up there in S tier. They have gotten off to one of the best first halves to a season in NHL history by any team, and this is a team that a lot of people kind of expected to fall off this season, myself included. I had them 4th in the Atlantic, and they have been basically unbeatable all season long, especially on home ice. They still haven't lost a home ice game in regulation, which is nuts. I actually made an entire video breaking down the Boston Bruins first half of the season a couple of days ago, so go check that out if you have not already. Next up, we have the Anaheim Ducks, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in the Bedard tier. This team absolutely sucks, and I guess maybe you could say they should be in D or F just based on their results, but this is all relative to expectations that I had for these teams coming into the season, and I didn't expect the Ducks to be good, and they've honestly been a lot worse than I thought. Obviously, the Ducks have some really fun players on that team. Trevor Zegras, one of the most fun players to watch in the league. Mason McTavish has come on stronger as the year has gone along, but overall, if you're looking to watch good hockey, I wouldn't suggest watching Anaheim Ducks games this season. Let's do the Florida Panthers next. I'm putting them in F tier. I know they're currently sitting at 500, and they just had a big win last night against the Colorado Avalanche, but this team literally just won the President's Trophy last season, and this season they are 6 points out of a wildcard spot, and the Penguins have 2 games in hand. It has been an absolute disastrous first half of the season for the Panthers, and to make matters worse, they don't even own their first round pick for the upcoming draft. For those wondering, that first round pick went to Montreal as part of the Ben Sherratt deal at last season's trade deadline. Could you imagine if the Montreal Canadiens end up getting Connor Bedard from trading Ben Sherratt last year? If you're the Florida Panthers, I honestly don't know what you do at this point. Do you buy? Do you mortgage more of your future to try to improve your team and make a push at the playoffs this season? Or do you decide to sell off some assets and try to recoup draft picks? Maybe try to get a first round pick in this upcoming draft. Next up, we have the Buffalo Sabres. I'm going to go ahead and give them an A. Relative to the expectations that I and many people had for this team heading into the season, they have blown those expectations out of the water. They are only 6 points back of the Pittsburgh Penguins for that second wildcard spot, and they have a game in hand. When you look at the majority of teams around the Buffalo Sabres in the standings, they have negative goal differentials. The Buffalo Sabres, however, are currently sitting at a plus 17. This is legitimately a good team, especially offensively. They have so many weapons. Tage Thompson has just gotten better. Dylan Cousins is having a big breakout season. Jeff Skinner seems to be all the way back after really struggling in his first few seasons after signing that big contract. If you ask me, Alex Tuch is looking like the future captain of this team. Rasmus Dahlin obviously having the best season of his career. I could go on and on. I'm really rooting for the Buffalo Sabres. I would love to see them get in as a wildcard team. Let's do the Colorado Avalanche next, and this is kind of a tough one. I'm gonna put them in C tier. Now, ideally, the team that just won the Stanley Cup and, of course, has Stanley Cup aspirations again this season, you want them to be in a playoff spot halfway through the year, but considering all of the injuries Colorado has had so far this year, I don't think they're in a bad spot. They're only 2 points back of Edmonton for the second wildcard spot, and they have 3 games in hand. They just got McKinnon back, and at some point they are going to be healthy, hopefully, when Landeskog comes back, and it seems like Nichushkin just comes back and then re-injures something, so he's had a really rough season. Say a month from now, 2 months from now, if they're not in a playoff spot, then I think it's time to worry. Then I would probably put them down in the D or F tier, but for now, considering all the injury luck they've had this season, I think they're in a fine position, so that's why they're in C tier. Moving along now, I'm just going in random order here. Let's do the Washington Capitals. I'm going to put them in B tier. They currently occupy the first wildcard spot, and after a slow start, they've really turned things around, and now they're just getting back Tom Wilson and Nicholas Backstrom, so I only expect them to continue to get better. I would definitely say if you're a Caps fan, you have to be pretty happy with where the team is at right now, considering you were without two of your most important players basically all season long up until now. Well, let's now put the rest of the teams in the Bedard tier that I think I'm going to put there. First, obviously the Chicago Blackhawks. Heading into the season, we knew they weren't going to be good. They knew they weren't going to be good. Their eyes are set on the draft lottery. Same deal with the Arizona Coyotes. They belong in the Bedard tier, although I will say them playing at Mullet Arena has gone a lot better than I expected it to. They're actually not a bad team on home ice, so I think you can take that as a win so far from the first half of the season, but overall, they definitely belong in the Bedard tier. The Columbus Blue Jackets is a tough one because when you look at where they're at now, yes, they're in the Bedard sweepstakes, but my expectations for them coming into the season were for them to be competing for a playoff spot, especially after going out and spending as much money as they did in free agency on the likes of Johnny Gaudreau, and they committed a lot to Eric Branson as well. They have had some pretty disgusting injury luck this season though, so I am just going to go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt and put them in the Bedard sweepstakes, although I will say, considering my expectations for them, they should be kind of around here. Next up, let's do the Detroit Red Wings, my favorite team. I think I'm going to put them in the B tier. I would say overall this season has been a success. Really the goal I think for Detroit heading into this year was just to see some improvement and at least be a competitive team, play meaningful games, after December, because for the past few years, Detroit has been out of the playoffs pretty much after the first month or two, and right now they are still technically in the wildcard hunt, although it's a long shot. They are over 500, and that's without having Tyler Bertuzzi, Jacob Vrana, and Robbie Fabry on the team pretty much for the entirety of the season, although Fabry and Bertuzzi are now back in the lineup. There's definitely been a lot to like if you're a Red Wings fan. Jonathan Berggren has been an amazing story. Free agent signings like Dominic Kubalik and David Perron have looked great. Really Husso as well for the majority of the season, so overall as a Wings fan, I would say I'm pretty happy with where the team's at. Well, let's now put some more teams in the Connor Bedard tier. The Montreal Canadiens, I think, belong there, even though I said before the season began that I think they could surprise some people this year based off of the talent they have on that roster, and for the first month or so, they weren't that bad, but they've really fallen off as of late, and now being, a bottom 7 team in the league, that's about what everyone expected, so I think they belong there. Same goes for the San Jose Sharks. I had little to no expectations for them coming into the season. I believe in my standings prediction video, I had them finishing last place in the Pacific, and even though it looks like that's going to be Anaheim, San Jose is still bad, and just as bad as I thought, really. The Philadelphia Flyers, I think, are the last team I'm going to put in the Bedard tier, although they aren't as bad as I thought they were going to be. Like, I thought they were going to be a bottom 3 team in the league without a doubt, and although that could still happen, at this point, they have exceeded my expectations a little bit. Next up, we have the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm going to go ahead and put them in the A tier. Prior to the current 4-game losing streak that they are on, they were one of the hottest teams in the league, and still, even with that 4-game losing streak, they have the 3rd best record in the league, actually tied for 2nd best with the Toronto Maple Leafs, so overall, they've had a really good season. I think it'd be a crime to put them anywhere lower than A, and since the Hurricanes are in the A tier, I feel like we have to go ahead and put the Toronto Maple Leafs up there in the A tier as well. After their slow start to the season, since then, they have been lights out, really consistent, and even with all the injuries they've had to important defensemen on this team, their defense overall has still looked really good. The Connor Timmins addition has been great, although the goaltending has cooled off a little bit over the past couple of weeks. Still, as a whole this season, I feel like both goaltenders have been better than anybody could have expected. Let's rank the New Jersey Devils next, and I feel like they belong in A tier as well. Had they continued their absurd start to the season, they would probably be up here in S tier with the Boston Bruins, but right now I feel like the Bruins are in a league of their own, so that's why I have them up there by themselves. So even though the New Jersey Devils have came back down to earth, I still think this first half of the season has been a massive success for them. I mean, this is a team that a lot of people didn't even expect to be a playoff team coming into the season, and currently they own the 6th best record in the league, led by Jack Hughes, who just continues to get better and better. He is a legit superstar now, one of the absolute best players in the league without a doubt. The Vancouver Canucks are up next, and man, do I put them in F tier with the Panthers or D tier by themselves so far? This is a tough one. Maybe this is a little bit too harsh, but I'm going to put the Vancouver Canucks in the F tier. This is a team that had playoff aspirations coming into the season, and so far the first half has been a complete disaster. They have less points right now than a team like the Philadelphia Flyers, who are down there in the Connor Bedard tier. Obviously, there's the whole JT Miller fiasco. That has just been a dark cloud hanging over the team, it seems like, all season long, and based off of all the reports we've gotten so far this season about JT Miller behind closed doors and what we've seen from him on the ice and the things he said to the media, that's a player ideally you'd want to look to move to maybe try to fix the locker room a little bit. But considering the fact that his massive 8-year extension doesn't even kick in until next season. It seems like that's a player that's almost impossible to move right now. Safe to say they made the wrong decision not trading JT Miller at last year's trade deadline and signing him to that massive extension before signing a guy like Bo Horvat to an extension like that, who they're now likely going to lose in free agency unless they trade him before the deadline. The Tampa Bay Lightning, I'm going to go ahead and put them in the B tier. They're third place currently in the Atlantic Division behind the Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins. It seems like that's probably where Tampa is going to finish the season. I can't see them catching Toronto or Boston. Tampa is kind of just coasting along, going through this regular season, doing what they got to do to get into the playoffs, and then I feel like once we get into the playoffs, that's where they're really going to turn things up. That's where we're going to see Tampa play their best hockey. So I honestly feel like the regular season doesn't even matter that much for them as long as they get in the playoffs, and it's looking like they're going to. The Edmonton Oilers, I'm going to put them in, not D tier, C tier with the Colorado Avalanche, and honestly, if there was a C minus, I would put them there. Yes, they're in a playoff spot currently. They own the second wildcard spot in the Western Conference, but by points percentage, they're not in a playoff spot. And for a team that just made the Western Conference Finals last season, for a team that has McDavid and Draisaitl, you need to be better than what they've been this season. I feel like the word to sum up the Oilers this year is just they're mid. They are super inconsistent. Obviously, the goaltending has been up and down. Stuart Skinner, luckily for them, has been solid this year, but the Jack Campbell contract already looks like one of the worst in the league. This is a team that I fully expect to be really active around the trade deadline, one of the most active teams out there, because you got to do more to put a better team around McDavid and Draisaitl when they're playing as well as they are right now. Let's now do the other Alberta team, and I think I'm going to put Calgary in the C tier with the Edmonton Oilers. They currently own the first wildcard spot in the Western Conference. They've been super inconsistent this year, really up and down. It just seems like when you think they get it rolling, then they'll lose like 2 or 3 games in a row. Obviously, they had a seismic shift in terms of the roster in the offseason in that big Matthew Tkachuk trade and then signing Nazem Kadri, but a lot of people thought they actually got better, and so far that has definitely not been the case. The Seattle Kraken, I feel like they have to be up there in A tier. Currently have the 10th best record in the league at 24-12-4. They own one of the divisional playoff spots in the Pacific Division. For a team that was one of the worst teams in the league last year, to have this big of a jump in year 2 of their franchise existing, I think is huge, and the way they're winning games, I think, is sustainable. They have a really deep roster, lines 1 through 4, and they aren't just fluking their way to wins. Just imagine what this team could look like if they get really good goaltending. The St. Louis Blues, based off of the expectations that I had for them coming into this season, I gotta put them in D tier. This is a team that I predicted to finish first place in the Central in the regular season. Sure, they have turned things around quite a bit from their horrible first couple of weeks of the season, but they still find themselves on the outside looking in terms of the playoff race in the Western Conference. There's a lot of talk about Ryan O'Reilly and where he could potentially go at the trade deadline if the Blues look to move him. This is not a team that I thought in any scenario would be sellers at the deadline, and that's kind of in the conversation right now. The Vegas Golden Knights, feel like I gotta put them up here in A tier as well for a team that just missed the playoffs last year, and I feel like still had a lot of doubters coming into this season due to their goaltending situation. They've been great. They are first place in the Pacific, 5th place overall in the league. Logan Thompson has came in and really stabilized their goaltending position. He's one of the favorites for the Calder Trophy at this point. I feel like it's him and Matty Beniers at this point. The Minnesota Wild, I'm going to go ahead and put them in B tier. They're currently 3rd place in the Central Division, and this is a team that did have a lot of doubters coming into this year. They got rid of Kevin Fiala for basically nothing that would help them currently. Everything they got in that deal was like future assets, and since their first couple of games of the season where they allowed like 14 goals in their first 2 games, something crazy like that, they have really been pretty good ever since then. So the Minnesota Wild, I think, could be pretty happy with their first half of the season, all things considered. The Dallas Stars has to be A tier. They are the best team in the Western Conference right now in terms of points with 56 in 42 games, and this is a team that didn't even really have that high of expectations coming into the season, or at least I didn't have that high of expectations for them. I'm pretty sure I actually predicted them to miss the playoffs in my season standings predictions video, if I'm not mistaken, so they've really surprised me. They're a lot better than I thought they were going to be, and this is a team with, I would say, one of the best young cores in the league with the likes of Jason Robertson, Roope Hintz, Miro Heiskanen, and Jake Ottinger, and after this season, or at least what we've seen so far, I feel like you can throw Wyatt Johnston in there as well. Let's do the Ottawa Senators next. I'm going to put them in C tier. Coming into this season after all the moves they made in the offseason, like trading for Alex DeBrincat, signing Claude Giroux, I feel like people kind of got ahead of themselves in terms of their expectations for Ottawa. I know a lot of people expected them to be in the thick of the wildcard hunt, and they technically still are, but definitely a real long shot. For me personally, I feel like they're right around where I expected them to be, hovering around 500. Obviously, they're getting a lot of good individual performances. DeBrincat and Giroux have looked great. Their offseason, their big offseason additions. The Winnipeg Jets, I feel like I have too many teams in A tier, but but I feel like I have to put them there. This is a team that didn't have high expectations coming into this year, I would say, from a lot of people. I expected them to be in the wildcard hunt, but for the majority of this season, they have been one of the best teams in the Western Conference. Connor Hellebuck is back to his dominant Vezina ways. Pierre-Luc Dubois having a really underrated season. Josh Morrissey breaking out and becoming a Norris candidate kind of out of nowhere. They're in a really good position right now, and I almost would say at this point they're a lock to make the playoffs based off what I've seen so far, although anything can happen. The Nashville Predators, I'm going to go ahead and put them in C tier. This is a team that went out and bought in the offseason, signing Nino Niederreiter in free agency, trading for Ryan McDonough, and currently they are not in a playoff spot, although by points percentage they would be, so they're not in a terrible spot, but I would say it's like 50-50 right now on if they make the playoffs. Like for an example, I would trust teams around them like Calgary and Edmonton to get in before Nashville does. That's just me. The New York Islanders, where do I want to put the Islanders? I think I'm going to land in C tier for them. After missing the playoffs last year, they have bounced back and find themselves right in the thick of the playoff race right now. They're 1 point back currently of the Penguins for that second wildcard spot. They have been sliding a little bit over the past couple of weeks, and that's kind of the reason they find themselves on the outside looking in right now, because I feel like for the majority of this season, they have been in a playoff spot, at least one of those wildcard spots, and overall, I would say it's been a solid bounce back season for the Islanders, and I expect them to be in the playoff hunt right till the end. The Pittsburgh Penguins, I'm going to go ahead and put them in the B tier. They are right around where I expected them to be, and that is in the wildcard hunt. They own the second wildcard spot currently. For a while to start out this season, it was looking like maybe this is going to be the year the Penguins finally miss the playoffs, but now I wouldn't count on it. This team just always finds a way to get things done, and then finding themselves in a playoff position halfway through the year, I would be surprised if they miss at this point. The New York Rangers, I'm going to go B tier for them, but if there was a B+, I would probably put them there. I think you could make a case they should be up here in the A tier. Currently third in the Metro, 53 points in 42 games. They aren't quite as dominant as I thought they were going to be heading into the season. I remember when I ranked teams on a tier list before the season started, I had them as one of my, I think, 4 Stanley Cup contenders. So they haven't been disappointing by any means, just not quite as dominant as I thought they were going to be. And now finally, to finish out the video, we have the Los Angeles Kings, and I'm going to put them in A tier. I still feel like I have too many teams up there, but they are having a really good season. They are in the hunt for first place in the Pacific Division with the Vegas Golden Knights. I feel like this team is living, breathing proof that goaltending in the NHL is just super unpredictable and just voodoo at any given time, because right now they're riding with Phoenix Copley, who is 11-2 with a .904 save percentage. He's kind of taken over as the Kings starting goaltender when they have $10 million tied up in 2 other guys in Peterson and Jonathan Quick. So definitely a weird goaltending situation, but hey, they're getting the results that they want. So that is going to wrap up today's video, grading every single NHL team at pretty much the halfway point of the season. Obviously, these are just my opinions, and your list could definitely look a lot different because you could have had different expectations for these teams than I did coming into the season. So be sure to let me know what your list would look like down below in the comments, or if you want to go make a tier list for yourself and tag me in it on Twitter or Instagram, that works too. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave it a like. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year long, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all soon.